Hi guys, John here. We're continuing on in the apprenticeship with seeking to understand this idea of listening to God. And this week, what I want to be talking about is the idea that church planting flows from listening to God. Um, Remember, we've identified one of our key verses as John 5:19. That one verse, probably more than any other, explains the life and ministry of Jesus. It's where he says, I do nothing on my own initiative. I only do what I see the Father doing. So we can begin to ask the question, what exactly do we see Jesus doing? What does he do? And if we work backwards from that, the assumption is that those are the things that the Father had instructed him to do, had directed him to do. So one of the things that we see Jesus doing, I believe, is, and this will sound kind of strange, is planting churches. Now, I want to give credit to someone who has helped me a great deal, kind of opened my eyes on this. Here's a book. It's called House Church and Mission by Roger Gehring. This was a revolutionary book for me. Uh, uh, it's a difficult book to read. It's written on an academic level. It's his doctoral thesis, so it's a little hard to wade through it. And what I did was to boil the whole book down to about 12 or 15 pages of quotes, which I would be glad to send you if anybody's interested. Just email me. But here's Gehring's amazing insight, and that is that the primary way that Jesus went about expanding the kingdom was by planting churches. This was the primary way that Jesus went about fulfilling the Great Commission. And although the word church isn't used, ecclesia, it's exactly what Jesus was doing. So what Gehring points out is he points us to Peter's household. And basically Jesus is establishing a community there, a small family-like community that's based in Peter's home, first of all. And then he does the same kind of thing at Martha and Mary's home, and probably the same thing at Zacchaeus' home. He's establishing these household communities as bases of operation for the kingdom of God. And we might ask the question, why is he doing that? Why is Jesus focusing on these households? And I would refer you to another book here which gives great insights into this. It's Frank Viola's book called Reimagining Church. Let me read just a sentence or two from this. Frank says, the church is an organic expression of the triune God. Properly conceived, the church is the gathered community that shares God's life and expresses it in the earth. Put another way, the church is the earthly image of the triune God. So think about it. Before Jesus showed up on the earth, what was he doing? Well, throughout all of eternity, he had been a part of the greatest small group that ever had existed, and that is the Trinity. It's in the context of this that there's mutual love and mutual submission, mutual honoring. Really, the one another's are functioning there. So what Jesus is doing is he is establishing these communities as reflections of what he has experienced within the Trinity. So we might call a house church a Trinitarian community. That's why this idea of church planting is so central to the fulfillment of the Great Commission. So Gehring points out that first of all, Jesus does this, and of course he's got his disciples along, and they watch him and participate with him in these little communities that he's beginning to develop. Then we see the second stage, and this is in Matthew 10. Jesus has 12 disciples at this point, and he pairs them up, and he sends them out two by two to do what? When you go into a town or village, find what he calls a worthy man. It literally means a person who's receptive to the message. God has prepared this person. When you find that person, settle down there in his oikos, in his household, and basically impart the virus of the kingdom in that context. Do what Jesus has been doing. He's teaching his disciples to really follow in his footsteps. That's stage 2. Then stage 3 we see in Luke 10. What does Jesus do there? And now he's got the 12, and then he says 72 more. So that would mean there would be 84 guys, pairs them up two by two, sends them out. What are the instructions? Same instructions. When you go into a town or village, find the person of peace, the house of peace. When you find them, settle down there. Eat what is set before you. Heal the sick. cast out demons, preach the good news of the gospel, basically impart the virus of the kingdom in the context of this household. What is he doing? I think he's planting churches, and then he's teaching his disciples to do the same thing. And then the next stage is post-Easter. What do we see Peter doing? What do we see Paul doing? Acts 10, Peter goes to Cornelius's house. Cornelius is clearly a man of peace. And I believe that Peter is establishing a church, a vibrant family of Jesus in Peter's home on that day. We see Paul doing the same kind of thing with Aquila and Priscilla, with Stephanas, with Nympha, with Phoebe. And so we see the gospel going out, the kingdom spreading through church planting, through establishing these Trinitarian communities all over the place, where people in that neighborhood, as they look at that house church, what they can see is what God is like, what the Trinity is like, what this kind of community, where there is this mutual love and mutual respect, mutual honoring going on. What does Jesus say in John 13? He says, "By this will all men know that you are my disciples, that you love one another." Francis Schaeffer calls this the ultimate apologetic. So that's the reason that the Luke 10 community, that's why we chose that name, by the way, but it's the reason the Luke 10 community has as its ultimate goal to see a vibrant family of Jesus within easy access of every person on the planet. Or we might say a vibrant family of Jesus within on every block of every neighborhood of every city around the world. That's the passion that we share. That's where we're headed, as crazy as that goal might sound, because we think that's what Jesus was about, because that's what the Father led him to do. And it all flows out of listening to the Father in establishing these little communities. So the apprenticeship that you're a part of right now, we only spend a little bit of time on church planting. We cover a lot of other kind of things, but we're developing further apprenticeship courses that will talk about how to lead a house church, another course that will talk about planting churches. And some of you, God has called you to this role of being an apostolic church planter. And so I want you to think about that and pray about that. And talk to your cohort leader, your cohort coach about that. If that's something that's in your heart, you're saying, I would like to be a part of that. I'd like further training along that line. Talk to your cohort coach about that. So the idea here, and we've got some other videos we'll have you watch about this, but the idea for this week that I want you to think about is that church planting, establishing these organic, simple churches, is the primary way that Jesus went about fulfilling the Great Commission, and therefore it should be our way as well. And that's what we want to begin to paint that picture. It's a whole new idea. People have all kinds of ideas about fulfilling the Great Commission, but this is a kind of a radical new idea that it comes through church planting. So think about that. Consider that as you're a part of the house church that you're a part of. Thanks.